Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. So right off the bat, we can see that I didn't think this through again. A smart guy would have put that dust chute on there before he hung the board over his head. But you know me, we work on the fly. All right, Atlas, move back, move back, move back. What a nut. Now if you pay attention, on the second pass through, when that dog's standing there, he tries to bite it right there. He tries to bite my board. This is a little different technique than I typically use. I would have shortened that board up, but I needed it long so it would work better. Pretty happy with the results with that spalted maple. You got some spalting right there. Here's some more nonsense. We're going to try and make a basket with a cup holder. Let's see how we do. Everything looks better in slow motion, except for when you don't make the basket. No good. All right, now my son is in the shop today, so we're trying to do a little hijinks here just to keep him entertained. And he was laughing right there, and so was I. And he begged me, he said, please make sure you keep this in the video. I said, oh, it's definitely going in. Right there, he said that. Please make sure it's in the video. So we split the spalted down the middle to get the same size on each side. Now here I wanted to show you the wood I'm working with is slightly cupped, slightly. But I'm not worried about that. I know how to fix it. It's a simple little step. You cut them in half. Make them smaller. See, it's just slight cupping. Nothing to worry about there. We can make some fine furniture with that. Most people would build a boat with it. Ah, perfect. Wrong. Let's cut them in half. And the object here is, once they're cut in half, I'll take them over to the bandsaw. You can see this, the cupping is a lot less now. But I'll take these over to the bandsaw and we'll put the high side against the fence. Flying glue. I wish it was that easy to glue panels up. But here we are at the bandsaw. We're using this Milescraft depth gauge. Works pretty good for this. What we want to do is take off a sliver off of the high side. One more look at that. We'll put the edges against the fence, put the belly out, slice it off, and then we'll look at our helper. There he is. Always supervising. More of the same. Cut them all in half, shorten them up, narrow them up, and run them through the bandsaw. Three-quarter inch spacer to set the fence. Oh, I missed a part here. My new blade on my bandsaw blew apart when I was in the middle of this process. So we're going to use the table saw. We don't give up. We're going to cut the high side with the table saw. That's what you get when you tighten the blade on your bandsaw too much. It explodes and you get to buy a new blade. But this works pretty good right here. A few more extra steps and we have a panel. Now we'll number those so that they stay in sequence. Pretty simple stuff. Miter fence in the table saw. We'll use the 1, 2, 3 block. I've accounted for that block and we'll cut them all the same length, 12 inches. Now the last couple of videos, I've done a lot of voiceover work here because I'm working on another project at the same time and the mill is running and it's extremely loud. The dust collector's on, the mill's running, tools are running. So it's difficult to talk live on camera. So we'll do a little voiceover and I'll tell you what we're doing. Right now I'm laying these out to create. This piece will be for your keyboard. on this elevated desk. I basically counted them out and put the same number on each side. The ones in the center are 2 inches wide, each of them, times 3, 6 inches. Now we'll go over to the mill and we'll create the riser. Uh-oh, more flying glue. Now the riser is too big for the mill, so I'm going to zero this thing in the back corner, back right. I'm going to let the machine work its way across the surface, creating the holes. Then I'm going to flip the board around the other way and put in the last 2 holes as an offset using the same program, paying attention and stopping it after the second hole so it doesn't tear into the first bunch that I had already cut. Again, that mini keyboard is a lifesaver with this. You can get right next to the bit to zero. 99% of the time I use the tried and true paper method for zeroing the Z. And that is at the farthest reach of my machine right there to the back. Dust collection in. We'll lower it down so it's just on the surface of the board. Bring the machine forward. And rock and roll. Now that piece on the front of that dust collector has a magnetic attachment that I can take off at will. There was no need to take it off here. You can see what we're doing. We're cutting rectangular holes all the way down this board. And those holes will be for height adjustment with your keyboard station or platform and your monitor platform. So as I said, we'll work our way all the way down this board, and I won't be able to cut the last 2. We'll flip the board around and then cut the last 2, and you'll see when I lift this up, they're offset down just a little bit, which is actually perfect for the foot to hold it up. Wish my arms were just a little bit longer for that table. Bottom 2 lower than the rest, but everything is evenly spaced. Now I was going to use my taper jig here, and I wanted to highlight this and show you how well it worked. We run into a little bit of a snag, as you'll see here in just a moment. That snag is the board that I want to taper is way too big. I can't use it. So we're going to freehand it. I drew a line down that board on the angle that I was hoping for. And very, very carefully we're going to push it through and cut off the wedges. You want to be very, very careful when you're doing this free-handed. But we nailed it first try. Now here, those pieces are all loose, but I wanted to check and make sure that when I push this thing through the riser, that the foot is going to allow the riser to tip back enough to work correctly. So we're just going to clamp it together here, using the clamp as a hammer. That's always a good idea. Let's use a piece of wood to square them up. And the back of your hand is a better hammer. And this thing is put together with oak and spalted chestnut, like I said in the beginning. The reason I'm gluing it this way is for strength, so that don't run the risk of splitting the wood on the long grain. The platforms are short grain, and so is the foot, but it's coming out pretty good. Pretty cool. I'm liking it. My board slipped there. I didn't have the clamp on tight enough. Bingo. Perfect. Mark where the board hits so that I can glue it together in the correct position. I've had to put this thing back and forth together probably 10 times in order to complete this project. Flying glue again. I cannot nail that. I don't know how the young kids do that with the water bottles. Applying the yellow goop. elevating the project so I can turn the clamps without having to smash my hands into the table again. And what you can see on the offside there is the other project that I'm working on. You can get just a sneak peek of the foot there on the bottom of it. We're going to use these bandy clamps. Instead of putting screws into the board, I'm going to use the bandy clamps to hold this flexible piece of wood to create the arch on the top. That way I don't have to drill any new holes and sand anything or fill anything. It's just an old-timer's trick. And yes, I can still use hand tools in the Hinkle shop. And if I'm not careful, I can trim my fingernail on my thumb. Again, forgetting the dust collection. Smoothing off the corner of the radius. Now here's the only good use for a cell phone, and that is to create a little round corner on the end of a woodworking project. Any other time, your cell phone should go in the trash. Gonna get out the old girl here and put her to work. This thing is used strictly for rough work because it sure does not track very well with that little 1/8 inch blade in there. But if you're very careful and go extremely slow, you can cut an arch with it. And the old secret is you don't cut the line off, you sand to the line. Putting a round over on the riser with the old Makita. Evening up the shoe, the foot. I thought it would look nice if I used the same radius on the riser on the shoe, and you'll see that here in a moment. So I put the riser on top of the shoe and drew the same curve. I used the hole in the riser to make sure I was square with the hole that was in the foot. Back to the old girl one more time. I got that bandsaw from a gentleman for $100 probably 5 years ago. It has been worth every penny. Exact thing, perfect round. Now here we're back to the Rikon bandsaw, and we're sliding the fence over so that I don't have to keep track of the width. I'll cut in here, flip over, cut in there to a stop point, and it's exactly the same. Adjust the fence once more, flip the board again, and I have a perfectly centered tongue. And that thing's looking pretty cool right now. As you can see, it comes completely apart into a collapsible fold-away piece that we can carry. And it's simply, everything slides back together. I don't know if you can see it, but on the keyboard shelf, I cut a little locking groove on the top. And I think I highlight that better when I'm putting the finish on this project. But there's your keyboard. There you're looking at something important. Let's put something important up there. How about a drill? And we can stare at that for a few minutes. Now I didn't like the loose flop of that thing back and forth. I don't want the monitor falling off of that thing, and I don't want it collapsing. So I said, you know what, here's where I'm going to change it and make it my own. Aside from putting that nice square hole in the shoe, making the radiuses match, I'm going to put these two braces in. I'm going to put them in with screws instead of gluing it together so that this thing will remain or still have the ability to be disassembled. Bingo bango, we got some braces. Looking pretty good. Now in order to drill this hole, I pre-draw or drew that pencil line, and that is the angle that I'm going to angle the drill at. I'm on my knees comparing the drill angle to that line, maintaining it as best as possible till the countersink buries. Call that a poor man's pocket hole, if you will. Then I run a bigger drill bit through to make sure I clear so that the screws that I run in there aren't biting into the wood, they're biting into what it's connecting to. As you can see, the holes go all the way through. Now this kind of threw me here a little bit, and I thought there's no way to do this other than to transfer where those feet are sitting, or where them braces are sitting on the back side. So lots of pencil marks later, and my around the corner Japanese square, and we've transferred all those marks, all those locations to the back side of this piece. I almost made a boo-boo here. I almost put that mark for that center of that hole in the wrong spot. But I caught it right there and realized I had marked the outside instead of center line of the brace. Lucky day. Same thing, you can see that there's a line on the edge that I'm using for the angle. Forgot to flip the thing over. Just remembered. And now we're putting extreme downforce on that brace so it doesn't move as I run the screws in. Second verse, same as the first on the second one. And this made that piece a whole lot more solid and made me feel a lot more comfortable about putting an expensive computer monitor on it. The monitor shelf was too wide, so I decided to shorten that up. As you can see by my left hand there's a groove there that I talked about earlier, the locking groove that keeps those platforms from sliding back out of the riser. Here we're going to cut a 1.25 inch radius on the corners of both shelves. There is a ton of sanding to do. There is the groove right there. That will lock in to the riser. Rounding off all corners. Almost lost my lock nut for my fence there. There's a sneak peek of that project that I'm working on. And there's what we're working on this week. The other project is directly behind it. Keep your eye out for that video. It'll be coming as soon as that's finished. Looking pretty good though. I think it's time for some finish. Because this thing had so many angles and holes and corners and crevices, I decided to use wipe-on poly. And man, how that grain pops. Alright folks, there you go. A stand-up desk for a desk, so you can stand up at your desk. How crazy. Anyway, I saw this project floating around Instagram and I thought, I think I can do that. I modified it a little bit, made it my own. As always, I hope you got something out of the video. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know I sure enjoyed making this thing for y'all. At any rate, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And as always, I'll catch you on the next one.